All right, here's our animal case study, specifically focusing on camels. Starting off with the history of camels, they've been domesticated for the past around 3,000 to 6,000 years, and specifically have provided us with milk, meat, wool, transportation, and more recently, tourism as an industry. Diving into domestication, they were originally domesticated around 6,000 years ago in Asia, domesticated through selective breeding and integration to multiple cultures. There are two different types of camels we'll be talking about today: dromedary, which are one hump camels, and Bactrian, which are two hump camels. So dromedary camels are were domesticated between 1100 and 1800 BCE in the Arabian Peninsula, whereas Bactrian camels were domesticated between 4300 and 3800 BCE in the northeastern Iran and southwestern Turkmenistan areas. The ecosystem. So camels were originally found in North America. They're herbivores and they adapted to varying climates. They eventually went extinct in North America due to hunting pressures and also migration patterns where they migrated south into mainly Africa and Asia.
So, since the domestication of camels around 3 to 4 thousand years ago, as we've discussed already, around the Arabian Peninsula and Central Asia and other areas, there have been different changes within the camels since this domestication. First off, the size and build. Just for reference, they can be domesticated camels are tend to be larger than their wild ancestors. One example of the differences are the dromedary or the one-humped camel, which was domesticated from the wild Arabian camel, which tends to be a more robust, larger, and more suited for carrying a heavy load over long distances, which will become relevant in the next section as well. And then there is the Bactrian camel or the two-humped camel, which you can see in the photos here also, which was domesticated in Central Asia. And they have more selective breeds made for colder climates, and they have more of a stockier build compared to the wild counterparts of these two-humped camels. Another adaptation or change in domestication is for work, which just some examples. Their humps, which store fat, allow them to survive in extreme environments where food can be scarce, making it a critical asset for desert agriculture, which we'll also see in different trade routes used throughout the desert as well, and different civilizations coming up. Along with that, their hooves have adapted to sandy, rugged terrain, making them excellent for traveling and carrying loads over difficult landscapes. Again, those trade routes will come in the next section. Also, their temperament within wild camels versus docile nature of domestic camels. You'll see this in a lot of domesticated animals used within agriculture. But yes, they tend to be more docile and adaptable to working in herds, and again, selectively bred to cooperate with humans. And then, as well as their physical resilience, camels have been again selectively bred, as are most agriculturally used animals. They have tend to have greater endurance, stamina, and the ability to withstand extreme temperatures, both hot and cold. And they've also developed a resilience to dehydration, for example, allowing them to go for long periods of time without water, which again is important when they're making these long treks that came up, especially in the introduction of different civilizations, which transitions us into our next topic. Sorry, which is the camel's role in conquest and civilization. Firstly, the camels were used for military use in conquest. One example would be in the 7th century with the Arab armies. Camels were used extensively in the conquest across North Africa and into Spain. They were suited for the desert environment, like I mentioned, more so than horses, and they could travel longer distances without water again. This gave the military forces with camels an advantage in the desert warfare. This also enabled the spread of Islam with the rise of the Islamic Empire, allowing their armies to move smoothly and quickly throughout the deserts of the Middle East and North Africa, helping facilitate the spread of Islam and Islamic culture through regions such as the Arabian Peninsula, North Africa, and Central Asia. They also played a really big part in trade routes, as I started to mention, some including the Silk Road and the Trans-Saharan trade routes. They were used to transport goods such as spices, textiles, and precious metals over large distances, again, with their ability to withstand dehydration and the extreme desert environments. And this facilitated cultural exchange in the spread of ideas between the East and the West. One important type of trade that they enabled was caravan trade using large groups of camels for carrying good. And this was an essential expansion for trade between the Arabian Peninsula and sub-Saharan Africa. This was also used in China, Central Asia, and Europe. Another way that they were used was in colonization and settlement. This came later on during European colonization when it started to move into Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. It was recognized quickly the value of camels for exploration, transportation, and settlement. For instance, in North Africa, camels became a crucial asset for military campaigns and trade in European colonization. And even in Australia, camels were brought from the Middle East in the 19th century to help with inland exploration and settlement, because as many people know, Australia has vast desert land, so it was perfect for this environment. The last role that it had in conquest and civilization, as many agricultural animals do, is a cultural and economic impact. Again, camels allowed nomadic cultures to thrive in the desert. They were able to develop economic systems in places like the Arabian Peninsula, Central Asia, and parts of Africa, which hadn't before with this nomadic lifestyle. And in these regions, camels were symbols of wealth and status and played a role in shaping social hierarchies and trade practices at the time.
Camels have been used in agriculture for thousands of years, especially in arid and semi-arid regions where other livestock struggle to survive. Today, they're primarily used for milk, meat, and transportation in places mostly like Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Their milk is a staple for millions of people and is becoming more popular because of its nutritional benefits, like being rich in vitamins and lower in lactose than cow's milk. Their meat is also consumed more often, especially in regions with water scarcity where raising cattle really isn't an option. There are about 41 million camels worldwide, and the largest populations are found in Somalia, Sudan, and Kenya. Australia also has a pretty significant population of feral camels since they were introduced in the 1800s for transportation, but today they're considered an invasive species. They originated in North America but migrated across the Bering Strait 7 million years ago to Asia, and they were domesticated in the Middle East around 3,000 years ago. Trade routes like the Silk Road and the Trans-Saharan trade route expanded their use across Asia and Africa, which made them essential for transportation and food security. In their native and traditionally domesticated environments, they're pretty well adapted to harsh climates, require less water, and don't overgraze like other livestock. Although in non-native ecosystems like Australia, like I previously mentioned, they cause pretty significant environmental damage. The feral camel population competes with native species for water, damage native vegetation, and can contribute to desertification. They can also damage salt lake ecosystems, pollute water holes, and destabilize desert dunes, which can lead to erosion. Camels are an important resource for sustainable agriculture in drought-prone areas, and unlike cattle, they have a low carbon footprint, consume less water, and can survive on sparse vegetation, which makes them a pretty resilient livestock option in the face of climate change.
How are camels being used in sustainable agriculture? In Kenya, camels are raised for their milk, which is a vital source of nutrition for multiple communities. Camel milk is also more drought resistant compared to cattle milk production, making it a sustainable agricultural practice in dry regions. The milk is also gaining commercial value in urban markets. In Texas, some farms, such as the Texas Camel Corps, have started camel dairy production. Camel milk is valued for its potential health benefits and is marketed as an alternative for people with lactose intolerance or autoimmune conditions. Some small farms also raise camels for agritourism and educational purposes. So, what are they doing differently than in conventional agriculture? Camel dairy farming, as seen in Kenya and Texas, requires less water and feed compared to conventional dairy farming with cows. Camel milk also has a longer shelf life without refrigeration, making it easier to store and transport in remote areas. Camel milk is also drought resistant and more sustainable. Camels thrive in dry environments where conventional livestock, like cows, struggle. Unlike cattle, they require less water and can graze on brittle vegetation, making them a more sustainable option in dry regions.